We are live and we are now broadcasting. So if we are ready, I can stop this background. Give me a few. Here we go. Here we go, we're live. And good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody, welcome.
Good evening.
To an intergenerational conversation with Dolores Huerta. I welcome everyone who's joining us via Facebook Live and Zoom. And if you'd like to comment and or ask a question, please do so by posting in Facebook or writing in the Zoom's chat Q&A section, and we'll get the message. So hello again, my name is Yesenia Lopez, and I am the director of the New Jersey Hispanic Research and Information Center at the Newark Public Library. And I have to take a breath after that very long title. I get used to it after saying it over 15 years ago. But if this is the first time that you all are joining us at the NJHRIC, as I mentioned, it's a long title. So if you hear me refer to the HRIC, the NJHRIC, it's all the Hispanic Research and Information Center. But if this is your first time, I invite you all to learn more about La Sala Hispanoamericana, which is a Spanish language book collection geared towards the Spanish dominant community, where we host programs and other services for that community. We also have the Puerto Rican Community Archive, which is an archive of papers made up from the community we document. That basically means that community members have donated photos, flyers, brochures, scrapbooks, everything that reflects the presence of our community in New Jersey to the archive, and it's now available for research. And we also have our Hispanic reference collection, and it hosts our Latino oral history collection, which consists of over 100 interviews of different Latinos throughout the state of New Jersey. And a couple of new local newspaper collections. The newest one is actually a donation from Irving Linares, who after 40 years of publishing El Nuevo Coquí in Newark has donated the collection to the Newark Public Library. So stay tuned. We should have those available for research soon as well. And that collection is actually collected now during COVID. So you see that we're out there still working and saving our history despite, some of the circumstances that we have. So if you can learn more about all of these components of the HRIC and the library, including recordings of past programs. A little earlier, I shared how I've hosted more programs, during this year than I have any other year. So it's there's a plus to some frowning situations. And you could view these programs on our website at www.mpl.org. You could follow us at NJHRIC on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You could follow the Newark Public Library on YouTube, where you're going to find this program later on after it's recorded. And I want to bring your attention to a couple of programs that we have coming up. One is our Gente Cuentos program. This is going to be, I believe, our 4th session. This Saturday, Gente Cuentos is a book club where, not like a book club, you don't have to read the book before you get there. We join in a group via Zoom. We listen to a story read out loud, a short story, and we discuss it based on our life experiences and thoughts. And it's a really good time to sort of, one, to just hear a story read out loud to you. I didn't realize what a difference it had been. I had never sat down for a story out loud, since I was a child probably. But it really does make a difference just kind of hearing a story read to you rather than reading it, and following the discussion with a wonderful group of people. So if you want to participate in that, we can do it from anywhere. That's another great thing about, virtual programming this year. We get, to interact with people. We had a program where we faced or Zoom, had a Zoom session with our sister, what we call our sister library, and across the other end of the world, right? So, so this is really great, and anyone could participate. It's Saturdays at 4 o'clock. And there's still time to register. You can find information again on our website for Gente Cuentos. And then every Tuesday and Thursday evening, we have our Tiempo de Cuentos. We have our Spanish story times on Facebook Live at 7 o'clock. So please stay tuned to these programs as well, and tune in, of course, to our past programs and other Latino celebration programs we've had. So now, on behalf of the HRIC, the New Jersey State Council on the Arts, Columbia Bank, the Friends of the HRIC, and the Newark Public Library, we're honored to host this program as part of this year's Latino celebration at the library. Now, the Newark Public Library, some may not know, has actually been celebrating Hispanic heritage for over 40 years already. And for the past 20 years, we've celebrated with a series of programs and an accompanying exhibit with a focus on a specific community and or a theme, a common theme. And this year's theme was initially on the anniversary celebration of Hispanic heritage celebrations at the Newark Public Library. However, once the civil protests began to take place in our neighborhoods this summer, in various states and heck around the world, you know, we just knew that it was critically important to shift this year's Latino celebration focus to Latinx and civil rights. I'm really excited to host this timely discussion. With this, right, we hope to shed light on the long history of civil rights struggles of the Latino community. And as I'm sure that you all can agree, this is a critical time in American history. And as the late Dr. Hida Hidalgo once told me, we must know our history in order to know where we're going, right? So on this thought, it gives me great pleasure to host this timely conversation with Latinx activist, the iconic Dolores Huerta, lead organizer at Make the Road New Jersey, Nedia Morsy, and immigration activist Giancarlo Tello. I thank you guys for participating. And on that note, I have the pleasure to introduce today's moderator. She is a visionary leader and educator with research, policy, legislative, and program development experience. She has a record of applied experience on the development of strategic union organizing, electoral, and worker justice community campaigns. Currently, she is the co-director of the Worker Institute, ILR Cornell University, where she's a member of the leadership team that oversees the successful management of the Institute's vision and mission to advance collective bargaining, worker rights, and economic justice via research and education on contemporary labor issues to generate innovative thinking and solutions to problems related to work, the economy, and society. She's been recognized as one of New Jersey's most influential political leaders by several publications. Insider NJ's 100 Policymaker in 2019, 18, and 17, Observer Politicker's 100 Power List in 2016, Politicker NJ's Top 51 Most Influential Latino Leaders in New Jersey for 2015. And in 2017, she was recognized as one of El Salvador's 100 most influential women in the diaspora, an honor that she is especially proud of as an American citizen of Salvadoran descent. So here to moderate today's program, I introduce Dr. Patricia Campos Medina.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor of my life to be able to be here with one of our icons and a role model for me, Dolores, and two young leaders who I know because I have been part of the struggles that you have led for our community here in New Jersey and in the United States around the Dreamers and rights for immigrant workers. Dolores, you are an icon, you are a role model for all of us in this movement. You and I met when I was a young organizer with LACLA and they unite the apparel and textile workers unions in California, and then through so many work that we did together at LACLA. So I feel like I am, you've been part of my circle of women who have supported me through my life in the labor movement. So thank you for that and for all that you've done. So I am so excited to host this conversation because it's such a critical moment for us, for the United States. And as Latinos, we are Americans and we're part of the American experience. So our experience fighting for our rights and our rights to belong in the United States is part of the American history. It's the American history of struggles. But at each moment in our history as a society, as a country, we have had moments of contention and moments of choices that leaders have made to call on the question as to what is the promise of America? What is the promise that we are a country that lives up to equality and justice for all? And as you know, we are living that question right now as we are into 2 weeks of this election. And we are going to have to wrestle with what equality and justice for all means every moment moving forward. So with that, with that context, in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of an election, in the middle of massive social inequality, in the middle of an uprising of Black youth, immigrant youth who are demanding their rights, what does it mean to strive again for justice, and what the civil rights movement means for us in that moment? So with that, Dolores, I want to introduce a little bit about you and a little bit about Giancarlo and Nedia, and have a conversation about what this moment means for us. We all know Dolores. She's an icon for all of us, but we know her as a civil rights leader, as a co-founder of the United Farm Workers Union, and as a labor rights leader who has given a voice to so many struggles for workers. Right now, Dolores Huerta is the founder and president of the Dolores Huerta Foundation. In her foundation is connecting groundbreaking community-based organizing to state and national movements to register and educate voters, advocate for education reform, bring about infrastructure improvements in low-income communities, advocate for greater equality for the LGBT community, and create stronger leadership development for youth and for women. She has received numerous awards, among them the Eleanor Roosevelt Human Rights Award from President Clinton in 1998. And in 2012, President Obama bestowed Dolores with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor in the United States. Thank you, Dolores, for that service. Giancarlo Tello, he's a former Dreamer, a leader of the Dreamer movement in New Jersey. Originally from Peru, Giancarlo tirelessly advocacy for the passage of the law that allow New Jersey's undocumented students to pay in-state tuition at state universities. He navigated countless hurdles created by a broken immigration system, and finally graduated from community college and then Rutgers University, Newark in 2016. Giancarlo knows firsthand the obstacles to opportunity undocumented youth face today. His advocacy as part of the Tuition Equity for Dreamers Coalition in New Jersey earned Giancarlo high praise and much respect from the immigrant advocacy community nationally. And he's known nationally as one of the best organizers in the country. In 2014, Giancarlo Tello was recognized on the 40 Under 40 Latinos in American Politics for his tireless advocacy for undocumented immigrant youth. He continues his work today in education, access as the program manager for Undocu Jersey, and working for access to education for immigrant youth and Latino students at the Newark public school system. Thank you, Giancarlo, for being here. Nedia Morsy is at the forefront of the struggle for workers' rights or immigrant workers in New Jersey today. She's the lead organizer at Make the Road New Jersey. Nedia is responsible for expanding educational opportunities for immigrant youth in Greater Union County and youth leadership development. Nedia is an Amherst College and Coro Fellow alum and a 2018 New Leaders Council New Jersey Chapter Fellow. Launched in 2014, Made the Road New Jersey builds the power of immigrant and working class communities in New Jersey to achieve dignity and justice through community organized legal and support services, and focuses on transformative education and policy innovation. Thank you, Nedia, for being here. So let's start with Dolores. Yes, thank you. It's exciting to have you all here in this conversation and to be part of this exciting conversation. Let's start with Dolores. Given your history of advocacy in so many of our key struggles as Latinos in the United States, beginning from the civil rights movement, the rights of workers to organize farm workers, how do you feel right now when we have this uprising of white supremacy, these attacks on immigrant workers? How do you feel? Do you feel that we have made progress? Do you feel that we're going backwards? How do you see the state of Latino civil rights right now in the United States?
Okay, you're good.
Yeah, that's a very good, that's a very great question. You might say it's the question of the day. So the one issue that we have before all of us, especially when we have seen all of the young people out there on the street marching for racial justice. And I think it's a very scary moment. So we have to look at it, I think, from two different perspectives. One of them, we know that the racism has existed in the United States. It goes back to the days, to slavery days. And all of the racial discrimination comes from that, from slavery, when you want people to work for nothing, but then you have to justify that because it is immoral, but you have to say, well, you know, but they're not quite human. You know, they're subhuman people, and they're subhuman. And of course, because people are darker in skin, then that also attaches to that whole idea of racism. And I say that also domination comes from there also. And the reason I want to include the word domination, because then that transcends to women. So women, of course, are also expected to work for nothing. Whether it's a housewife at the home, taking care of the children, taking care of the house, doing all the cooking and the cleaning. But you know what? They're supposed to work for nothing also. So we can see where how slavery and that legacy of slavery is so huge. It kind of just transcends everything that we do. So we know, but number one, once we understand where racism comes from, where it begins, and then we are beginning to understand why it exists. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said that racism is an illness. It's a sickness, and that we who are trying to make changes, we have to see this as something that we have to address, and then we have to become the healers to get out there and to challenge racism and making sure that we get rid of it. So on the one hand, we now see that it is profiled, it's very, very visible, it's a top issue that we have. And so in some respects, we might say, hey, we're glad people are finally talking about it, because it's been there and it's kind of been, you know, submerged. We know that people of color, they suffer this every day of their lives, but people kind of pretend that it doesn't exist. Well, now we know, hey, it does exist. Not only that, but people have to be put on the spot. Either you're a racist or you're not a racist, okay? And people can be called out, and they have to take actions to show that they're working against racism, or that they are taking actions to uphold it and keep racism. So por esa parte, I think it's bonito, you know, because of that, I think it's really nice. It's like Al Sharpton said, they took off the hoods and they put on the suits.
Yes, now it's obvious, yes.
Yeah. But even if they have a suit on, we know by their actions and by their words exactly who they are. So in that respect, it's good. But the other scary thing is that it is so permeated in our society that we know that we have to work very, very hard to get rid of it. But we're in the position now where we can challenge every single organization, be it public or be it private. Okay, you've got to step up now and you've got to do something to erase the racism in our society. We got to call on people because we know racism is dangerous, not only for all of the past and how people have been treated, how people have suffered, all of the lynchings, you know, the mass incarcerations that exist in our society. These are the vestiges of slavery, and they're very, very visible. So we could say to people now, you and you and you and you have got to do something about this to end it. It's dangerous because if you can get someone that drives in a car 200 miles to go to El Paso, Texas to kill people because they're Mexicans, or there you have there in I get with New Jersey, was it New Jersey, in the synagogue where they kill people because they're Jews, or people in the South that are killed because they're Blacks, or people because they're killed because they're Muslims. Oh, and we can extend this to women that are killed just because they're women, because they're still looked upon as sex objects and servants, right? And if they don't do what the master wants, then we just kill them, you know. So we can see what the manifestations are, and we know that we have to get rid of it. And it's very, very scary when you think how much of our society has that poison and that illness of racism. So we have to start attacking it. And one of the ways that I like to attack racism, just to remind everybody that we are one human race, one Homo sapiens, one human race. We have a lot of different nationalities. We have a lot of different cultures, but only one human race, okay? And we can just drive that home to everyone. And then the other thing, topping on that, is that our human race came from where? Africa. That's where our human race began. You know, right now we have a lot of talk about science, whether it's about the pandemic or global warming or whatever. Science, 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 yes. Homo sapiens, our human race, started in Africa, went across the planet, lost their color. People got lighter eyes, lighter skin, lighter hair, but we all came from Africa. And I like to repeat that because then we can say to all the white supremacists out there, guess what? You're Africans, okay? Just get over it already. You're Africans. You got to accept that. It's science. It's in your DNA. You're African. And if we can get people to start understanding that, then we can start, you know, we can start chipping away at racism and starting to end it. And that also applies to our Latino community, because we know that the whiteness in our Latino community is celebrated instead of our darkness, which really goes back to our indigenous roots. You know, our darkness comes from our indigenous roots, and that is what we have to embrace, our indigenous roots, and not only the color of our skin, but also the values of our indigenous roots, which were, you know, the values that we had, and that we had to have those values, because in order to be able to even continue to live on this planet, to survive, we had to protect each other. We had to care for each other. We had to share whatever we had to share it with each other, okay? And that's how we survived on the planet. And going forward, not only because of the pandemic, but when we think of a global world and a global community, again, we have to think that we have to work together, protect each other, share whatever we have, and that's how we will survive on this planet.
Yeah. Thank you, Dolores. I think that is critical to understand what unites us as a society rather than what divides us. And I think that the power that this divisive message that we have, which is a tactic to gain power and control over who we are as a country, you know, it's a tactic for those in power that we have. So, but I wanted to think about, you know, as a society, we go through these movements, right? We are, you know, where we have terms of oppression and of open racism, which you know, racism has existed with us through many years, as you said, but it's like social movements go up and down. And I think somehow we're right now in a period of the right trying to gain control back after a period of progressive policies. So in that sense, I want to ask Giancarlo, as a young organizer, as someone who entered this movement as an undocumented youth, demanding the rights to belong in the United States. What have you learned from the history of civil rights movements that was led by people like Dolores? And how did you sort of use some of that experience to sort of launch this demand for rights for the undocumented youth that you were part of here in New Jersey and you are still part of leading right now?
That's a great question. And first of all, thank you for the Newark Public Library, Dr. Campos, Ms. Huerta, Nedia, Yesenia, all for organizing this, being part of it, and ensuring the conversation continues and will continue so that all this institutional knowledge, all these tactics, all these strategies continue being passed down for generations, right? So the arc can keep bending. So I think in my personal experience, I learned a lot when I went in, with the demanding that I belong. So for context, I did move from Peru when I was 6 years old to the US. And I didn't even know I was undocumented until I got to high school. So for me, at that point, I thought for me to belong, I just need a piece of paper that says I'm a citizen, that I have Social Security. Because that's what I thought. That's what I thought at the time my struggle was, right? I can't drive, or Social Security will fix that, right? I can't go to college, or financial aid will fix that, right? Just being a citizen. I think being involved in the movement at this point in time and being blessed to be around so many other amazing organizations and other movements at the same time, I realized that that's not the solution, right? That's not belonging, having a piece of paper saying you're a citizen, right? Belonging means you're getting a living wage, right? That you actually have access to healthcare, right? You have access to a union at your job, right? That you can't just be laid off at a moment's notice. So that's what I think was my big takeaway when I first started the movement, learning about it's so much deeper than it. It's so much more intersectional. Ms. Huerta, you definitely tied it all together with the civil rights movement and you brought it all back. But moving forward, it's definitely such an emphasis, I think, that a lot of young organizers, and I'm sure Nedia will speak to it about it at one point, how all of it is just so interlinked. During our movement to get tuition equality here in New Jersey specifically, I remember some of our earliest rallies were with folks in different organizing spaces. We would go with folks that are fighting for tuition reduction, right? College students who think college is too expensive. So you know what we would do? We would go to the State House together. We would chant with them, college is too expensive, and they would chant with us, we deserve tuition equity. So that's just one example of how going into the movement, starting organizing, how you can develop and learn and appreciate and then realize that all these struggles are so interconnected. And so that's something that we need to tackle and engage and be proactive about, right? It's not just enough saying that I'm going to post up Black Lives Matter on Facebook or on Twitter. We have to bring it home as well, because it's not always a comfortable conversation when we go home to our loved ones pre-pandemic, Thanksgiving, Christmas, etc. And then people are still saying derogatory terms, right? And a lot of those us have probably experienced that, unfortunately, in Spanish. And we think, oh, that's my aunt, that's my uncle, I don't want to stir anything up. That's my mom, that's my grandma, that's my grandpa. But then you look and in my experience, my grandpa is like darker than the rest of my family. So like, it's a valid thing to bring up, and it's important. And for us to be good allies, for us to expect allyship and to be good allies, we have to definitely reproduce that work at home and in our organizing, right? So that's definitely, I think,
one of the most exciting, thank you, Giancarlo. One of the most exciting things that I see happening today in our movement is how young people and young leaders like yourself are able to bring this intersectionality of our movements. That, we are Latinos, but we're Native, we are documented, we're undocumented, we're working people. we're dark skin, we're light skin, and you are the young generations more comfortable with the intersectionality of LGBTQ issues and that, you know, and what does that mean for that community to be undocumented or to have no rights at work. So that intersectionality, I think that it's exciting that young leaders like yourselves are able to manage well and be able to work within it and be able to make those connections across the state. So I'm gonna jump, and I wanna engage in that discussion with you, Dolores, later, but I wanna bring in the voice that Nedia next, because Nedia, you are at the forefront of leading the struggle for workers' rights for immigrant workers during the middle of the pandemic in New Jersey. New Jersey and New York suffered the brunt of the impact of COVID-19 and the number of deaths and the impact on our workplaces. So you are, and I am proud to say, we've been working together to drive the point that if you don't protect immigrant workers during this pandemic, you're not protecting anybody. So I commend you for that work. But how do you make the connections for new immigrants that arrive here hoping to build an American dream and the history of civil rights struggles for communities that have been here for a long time? And how do you make those connections between newer immigrants that are fighting for their survival and older Latinos who are still fighting for basic equality in the United States?
Yeah, so again, thank you everyone for organizing this event, and thank you for having us. I think one of the biggest things, so like you had mentioned, Dr. Campos, Make the Road New Jersey is a member-led organization. All of our members have a voice and a vote in the work, and taking on this campaign for Recovery for All was a direct result of the pivot and the call to action that was coming directly from our membership. And I think, how we're sort of, bridging the divide between the different communities that come to Make the Road and to our, weekly meeting spaces is, I guess, a few ways. One is just constantly being there. Our organizing structure, says that we meet every single week. And so there's always a space for our members to gather. We operate under a very, basic principle that all people deserve dignity and respect, and all people deserve the ability to thrive, not only, live and support their family, but thrive and build a future together and think about tomorrow and years away with their family, and not just get through the week. And I think all of that and making sure that our membership has the tools that they need to lead this campaign work is what has made us sticking into the fight so present, right? It's been 7 months now that our communities, more than 500,000 undocumented immigrants in New Jersey, have gone without economic relief. They're paying into an unemployment fund that they cannot tap into. They have not received the stimulus. And that means 7 months without a paycheck, 7 months without the ability to pay for rent, without the ability to pay for groceries. In that time, we got out of school and we came back into school. That's time when families don't have the ability to buy supplies for their students as they're getting ready for the new academic year. And so, having spaces where we're meeting every single week and we're hearing from our membership allows us to share these stories and find commonality, right? And we are constantly investing in our membership, because the movement can't survive and the movement isn't sustainable unless we're investing in our members. And so at Make the Road, right, we host leadership schools twice a year that our organizers spearhead. And in these leadership schools, we're talking about the history of civil rights movements out of the United States and here in the United States, and how that fight for really underlining the fact that all people deserve the ability to thrive has happened decade after decade. And the same way that farm workers were excluded, our people are excluded now. And it sort of demands of us to be creative and innovative, and to not be fearful, because our brothers and sisters, our ancestors, have had the same fight. And it's unfortunate that we're here today, but there are others that have persevered, maybe not always won, but continue to persevere. And that's sort of what we're bringing every single week into our organizing spaces.
That is amazing, because I see you as following on the footsteps of people who believe that organizing our communities is key to our transformation. Dolores, you one of my favorite quotes that you have that I have read, and I had seen the documentary, and I recommend that everybody watches the documentary, Dolores. And how you led the movement and built the union for the United Farm Workers. But one of the quotes that you always use is that you said that every interaction we have with a worker is an opportunity to turn them into an activist, and it's an opportunity to help them understand their own power. And that is so critical for us as leaders and organizers to understand that we can build power from people's everyday experiences. So how do you see this moment in which we see Latinos suffering the brunt of the pandemic, immigrant workers, and just immigrants, just Latinos in general, going without enough support during this pandemic and economic crisis? How do you see this as an opportunity to build power and union power, so that we can demand more from our economic system here in the United States?
Well, I think as union organizers, we know that when people are having a tough time, that's the best time to organize them. Sometimes where people are well off and they're happy and they're contented, then it's more difficult to get them to organize. So I think we have a perfect opportunity right now with our labor unions, with our nonprofit organizations, to reach out to Latinos, to invite them to come and to become part of our movement. They are ready right now, but sometimes people don't join a movement because nobody ever invites them. And now during the time of the election, this is a perfect time, because we have candidates that are running. You have different issues, propositions that people are working on, different ballot issues. So there is so much going on right now that it's a perfect time to invite people and tell them, yes, you can come in, you can help. We need you to join the movement. I saw Michael Moore, the filmmaker, on Broadway. Somebody got his tickets. and in his presentation that he made, he said, and he's calling on everybody to become activists. And he said, when we wake up in the morning, we wash our face, we brush our teeth, and then we should call our congressman. That should be the third thing that we do.
That goes to the heart of civic engagement, right?
Exactly, and that is such a simple thing that people can do. Like we say, just call your congressman. And we have all of these issues out there, especially after the election. We're going to start advocating for immigration reform. Make sure that Joe Biden keeps his promises. He says we're going to have health care for everybody, be it public or be it private. That we're going to have 2 years of free college for everybody. That we're going to have childcare for the women out there, universal childcare. So these are the things that we expect them to live up to their promises. So we have to become the advocates to make this happen. Because if we don't advocate, then nothing happens. And the whole idea about organizing, and I'm talking to organizers here, so I'm preaching to the choir. The idea is that you just have to reach more people and reach more people and reach more people. And sometimes we know that the first person that you talk to may not be interested. They're not ready to hear our message, but then we've got to go on to the next person or the next person and the next person. Helen Keller said that the greatest evil that exists in human beings, and that science has not found a cure for it, is apathy. Because most people don't think that they can make a difference. And people they're so busy with their family life, with their work life, that they don't think that they have time to become civically engaged. And that's what we do as organizers, say to them, no, we need you. We need you to come in. We need you to vote. We need you to organize. We need you to carry the message. And the one thing that we know as organizers, that when we do that, we are making lives people better.
Yeah.
And no los estamos molestando, we're not bothering them. We are inviting them to come in with joy, because when you're an activist, your whatever family problems you have, you know what? They're going to resolve themselves one way or the other. Okay. All of your problems, and actually your problems become smaller because you don't have time to think about them. You're too busy helping other people, you know, making changes, getting people involved. And so you don't have time to worry about all those problems back there. You put them in the back burner. Yeah. We're too busy. We're too busy. Yeah. So that's why I'm so excited about organizing. I get all emotional and I get all pent up because when I think of, because when you're an organizer, you are delivering to that person that you're organizing, you are delivering power to them. You are telling them you have power. You know, in the Catholic Church, we have the Mass and we have communion and all that. Well, this is very similar. We're not giving people a host, but we are giving them the gift of power that they already have, but they just don't know they have it. So what we're doing is we're just turning it on. You know, we're giving them la bateria, we're giving them the battery so they can do that.
I like that. I feel like the bunny, the ever ready. So we're in the middle of what I call the uprising. You know, we're in the middle of uprising for young people around issues of racial justice, against police brutality, for the worth of Black lives, for keeping immigrant families together. So I feel like we're in the middle of an uprising that is demanding change, and you'd be for climate change, to like change how we protect our planet. So I think there's a lot of energy, and at the same time, there is this belief that young people are not engaged, that people, that they don't vote. So to Giancarlo and Nedia, how do you react to this this rhetoric out there that we can count young people to help us turn this election around, or help us turn this this moment in our country right now? How do you respond to that? And what is your experience in the work that you do with young people and with immigrants as organizers?
You want to go, Nedia? I know you're more on the ground right now.
But you're working with young people in education in a school system. So we'll go, Nedia, and then you can go, Giancarlo.
So, I mean, I think, time and time again, like, young people have helped us set the stage for the battlefields that we go on and fight. I mean, I think about, before the 2018 congressional races, right? Young people, particularly the undocumented population and allies, young allies, were taking the streets, right, in New Jersey and across the country, right, calling for a DREAM Act that included all people, that was more expansive, calling for reform for all 11 million undocumented people, right? And these were, not totally new conversations that we were coming back to again before the congressional races in 2018. And, what did we see as a result of that, right? We saw a sweeping wave of blue hit the state of New Jersey. And really a lot of that platform that allowed those elected officials to take the stage and, to challenge, the folks they were up against, really was created by this like progressive movement that young people had rallied in the streets, right? A conversation that wasn't happening before. And I think, when, again, right, like in statewide reform, the same way farm workers were excluded, right? And these are things, right, the conversations about Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta are conversations that we still hear, not in all high schools, we should, but in some high schools. And those are the things that young people are bringing when they come to weekly organizing meetings, if they're already activated, right? And, the same, and I think back in 2018, again, when we fought for teen inclusion and the $15 minimum wage here in New Jersey, and the same way, just like, it's sort of a parallel that comes up over and over again, the same way farm workers were excluded, so too was there an attempt to exclude teen workers, right? And very often we hear this idea, right, that, teen workers are earning money to like buy sneakers and candy, but that's not true, right? We're forgetting about what all homes look like, right? And there are many homes where the teen worker is supporting the family and has a lot more familial responsibilities than we typically think of when we think of, you know, the modern American family. And young people came out in droves to defend their narrative and to demand inclusion, and they won. And so I think, you know, young people are activated, and, you know, the beautiful protests and peaceful protests that we have seen all through the spring and all through the summer are really driven by young people. And I think what we'll see in the next couple of months and the new battlefield that we'll fight on will be created by them.
Yeah. Giancarlo, I know you are now in the sphere of education and public education and trying to transform a public education system in Newark, New Jersey, one of our largest cities in diversity. So how do you see this playing, you know, for especially around the Puerto Rican community, which is so large in New Jersey and has its own challenges, you know, as a community that is American citizen, but yet gets treated as second class, both in Puerto Rico and sometimes when they come here in the United States?
Yeah, thank you. So definitely, I think that in Newark, where the library is hosted or resides, where we actually have, I think, our very first Latino Cuban superintendent, and I believe the history of Newark Board of Education. We have just gotten our local control back from state. And I know our new superintendent has been doing a lot of great initiatives to empower and agitate students to get them involved into, whether it be in their local classrooms, whether it be at the school level, whether it be telling them, you know, run for board, right? We have a student representative on the district's Board of Education. So he's definitely very committed to that. And I know overall that vision trickles down to how the district works with families and parents, our community engagement centers. But overall, and before I forget, because I know we're going to get to audience questions at one point, my background is United We Dream, which is like a really big, great organization that I started out my organizing with. For anybody that's interested, that's watching, that thinks like, hey, how can I get involved? You know, we don't want to leave you without that information, plus Make the Road and other organizations. Here to this side of me is the National Latinx Psychological Association. So they've both paired up to actually do webinars for mental health for Latinos during this time, because that's super important. They have live webinars and stuff. So I definitely encourage anybody. This is a hectic year and a lot of people are facing a lot of struggles, whether it be due to not being able to work, whether it be due to you not being represented, whether it be due to not being able to vote or what have you. Reach out and make sure you're taking care of yourself as well, because that's one of the most important things we can do. And definitely tying it into the original part of it, of students getting involved. In New Jersey, there's such a history of it, right? The Educational Opportunity Fund, which has helped a lot of students in the state to be able to go to college, bridge the gap, that are underrepresented, their families don't make a lot of money. One of the reasons it started was because student activists took over a campus right here in Newark at Rutgers University in Newark and did a sit-in and demanded change, because in a majority minority town, the minority was nowhere to be found in campus. And if they were very secluded, repressed, and not empowered at all. So I believe what we're doing is we're just continuing a tradition of Ms. Huerta, of student activists in the 60s and 70s here, of Dr. Campos, of Ms. Lopez. We're continuing to follow all of this. And the most important thing, I think, is making sure that we're doing it in a very strategic way. Because I think one of the things that we've learned, that I've learned with in my organizing, is there's always an inside-outside strategy, right? And we don't always have to exactly agree. For example, we partnered up with some very amazing union representatives here during some struggles, right? They're the ones that have access, that happen to have access to some of these legislators. They're the ones that have that professional relationship. What we can do is that we can go stage a sit-in there, or we can do a protest outside or a riot. And what our allies can do on the inside is say, hey, these kids are not going to stop. Why don't you just give them what they want, right? So there's definitely a lot of ways to play this, right? And I think Ms. Huerta brought it up very well in terms of how can we hold President Biden accountable when he gets elected? Because, you know, that's our goal. We're going to have to hold him accountable, right? And there's going to be people that need to be on the inside and people that need to be on the outside. And we're going to need to be agitating at all angles. And we're going to need to understand and respect that work. Because at the end of the day, you know, we are fighting towards the same cause. And I think a lot of young people realize that, and we need to connect to them and help them realize it. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez did an amazing engagement this week on Twitch. I don't know how many folks were able to watch it on Facebook that know about it. Twitch is a streaming platform for gamers, right? Like, it's mostly teenagers, early 20s, stream each other playing video games, Fortnite, Overwatch, League of Legends, what have you. And she engaged 500,000 people on her channel alone in one day to talk about getting out the vote. So developing these new ways to connect young people to their entry point, right? It could be get out the vote, it could be healthcare, it could be $15 minimum wage, and then bringing them in all into all these other intersectional movements. Gaming. Yes, exactly. So sorry, I rambled on a bit.
No, that's okay. No, I mean, that's a good example of how you figure out how to communicate with different audiences, how to bring people in. Before we go to questions for the audience, I wanted to just bring Dolores back into the conversation and just ask you, you know, what is, to you, given your experience and all that you have done for civil rights for all Latinos in the United States, what is different today about our social movement struggles, about our fights for civil rights, or what is the same, and what gives you hope as we enter this societal rising and these demands of your people to change in our society? What is different? What's the same, and what gives you hope, Dolores?
Well, I think we just heard the beautiful presentation about what's different, that you can reach 500,000 people at the same time. You know, with the devices that people have, all the social media platforms, of course, cell phones, Instagram, Twitter, you name it. Twitch, I think was the last one you mentioned, that you can reach, you know, millions of people in a moment, you might say, and you can mobilize people very quickly and bring them together, and you can inform them very quickly. And with Google and other search engines, you can find information out so nobody can hide anything anymore. You have access to all of the information. You're looking for the truth, you can find it. That's what's different. But the one thing though, I want to say to young people out there, we have to remember this, that protests and marches are good. It's so important that we bring out the issue, that we engage people, mobilize people, like I mentioned before, recruit people to help, whatever. But it has to, whatever we want to change has got to be put into the form of a law. It's got to be written down, it's got to be voted on, it's got to be a law. Because if it isn't a law, it's not going to be implemented. It's just going to be booyah, a dream, lo que queremos. But if it's a law, then it can be enforced. People can be held accountable. You know, that law is implemented, that it's actually going to happen. And that's why the elections are so important, because that's when we are electing the people that we want them to write the laws, make the laws, vote on the law that we want them to pass. So we have to keep that in mind, because a lot of young people say, well, I marched, I protested, I did my thing, I did my bit. No, that's not enough. You got to keep going, and the voting is an essential part of that. Because if we don't elect the people that we want to put what you want into a law, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And people have to really understand that, because a lot of young people say, well, it doesn't do any good, or I already did my bit. No, that's not going to happen. You got to make it into a law. And that's why the elections are so important. And I know in this election, people have said, we have said, vote as if your lives depend on it. Because of the pandemic, it does.
It does. It's a real. Yeah.
The other thing I like to say, I like to quote Abraham Lincoln, who said that the ballot is more powerful than the bullet. The ballot is stronger than the bullet. The ballot has more force than a bullet. So we can just make sure that everybody understands that. So if you are doing texting and phone banking and marching and you didn't vote, I'm sorry, You know, it's like they say, it's a team, democracy is like a team sport, you know? And so in order for democracy to work, everybody has to show up.
Yeah, we have to.
If you have a football game and one team shows up and the other doesn't show up, number one, it's not going to be a game. Number two, who's going to win? The team that showed up.
The one who showed up, yeah.
If we don't show up, then, you know, I like to say in Spanish, si no votamos, nos fregamos, you know? Cuando votamos, ganamos. And we have to make our people, our Latino people understand. Just one other more thing I want to add. Yeah. A lot of times for first-time Latino voters, when they get the ballot, and they see all of those candidates on there and they see all of the propositions, they think it's an examination. No es una prueba, okay? You don't have to vote for everything. If you don't know somebody that's on the ballot or you don't know one of the propositions, it's okay to leave it blank. Just mark the things that you know, because no quieren quedar mal, you know, they think they're gonna make a mistake if they don't mark everything. So we have to say to them, you know, don't worry about it. No te apuras. You don't have to mark every single thing on the ballot. Mark what you know.
And that's why it's so important that elected officials talk to our community so they get to see and learn who is running for office and what they're running for. So that's the relationship that we need to develop. I'm gonna take some questions from the audience for all of you, because I have several of them. The first one that I have is for you, Dolores, is a fifth grade teacher. She says that she has her students right now reading La Causa and learning the importance of the Latino civil rights movement and influential leaders who have led the struggle for transformation in our community. And one of the questions that her students have and she has had is, you know, it seems like those were such hard times for farm workers and for Latinos in the 1960s. But what kept you motivated to engage in those fights, and what challenges you had to face as a woman during those times, and have those changed today? Do you know, looking what's happening to now, you think that some of those challenges still exist today for women?
Well, yes, we made a lot of, we won a lot of things with the strike and the boycotts that we did. 17 million Americans helped us by not buying grapes or eating grapes. And we were able to get, for farm workers, toilets in the field. A big win, by the way. All over the United States of America, the growers have to have toilets for their workers, even in New Jersey. Farm workers in New Jersey have toilets now because of the strike of the farm workers in California. And we got in California unemployment insurance and the right to organize into a union. So those are many of the big wins that we won. So we know that we have made a lot of advances. Are farm workers okay? No, we can't say they're okay, because in New Jersey, you don't have a lot of the things that we want, like unemployment insurance for farm workers, a full workers' compensation. And so we know we still have a long way to go in terms of getting the kind of rights that we need and the benefits that we need for not only for farm workers, but for all workers, right? Because we have a union organizer with us right now, and you're out there fighting for more benefits for the workers. So we still have a long way to go. But now, you know, I think because of the things we just talked about, it's so much easier for us to be able to win some of these battles for the workers, things that we fought before. And as a woman, I have to say, with the workers, I always had the workers supported me. Sometimes with my fellow leaders, it was a little more difficult. Not Cesar Chavez. Cesar always supported me like I supported him. We thought very much alike. So, and sometimes we would have our differences and we could duke it out, you know, but at the end of it, we would come back together and keep working together. And it's always more difficult, as we know, for women, but that doesn't mean that we as women should give up. The one thing that we have to do is have faith in ourselves, try to find allies that will support us. And sometimes we have to go it alone. I mean, that's just the way it is. But the thing is that we have to know as women that we are as smart, as intelligent as men are. And sometimes we have a little added, I call it the Harriet Tubman gift. You know, we have intuition. Sometimes we can sense that things are going wrong, and sometimes we can't rationalize it or explain it, but we know because we feel it. And sometimes it's hard to get that out to people, and people don't quite listen to us. But I think that we as women, we have certain advantages, personal advantages that we have, and the other disadvantages that we have, well, we can work around them and organize around them.
I like that. We can multitask, we can do the big things and then also take care of our responsibilities at home. So the multitasking part is good. So in that sense, I wanted to just bring in Giancarlo and Nedia here. There's a question here as to what do you see are the biggest challenges that you face trying to elevate the voice of working people and trying to elevate the voice of not just the undocumented, but by just poor working people in this country so that they can have power to change, to demand more.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for the question. I think, you know, the irony, right, in the system is set up this way, right, that, you know, as a worker that doesn't have access to the benefits that all workers deserve, right, like you're working more than 40 hours a week, you're paid less than a living wage, right, like you're thinking about tomorrow, and you know, you know, sometimes we have, you know, the privilege of having these conversations of, you know, what do I want 5 years to look like from now? You know, where do I want my family to be in 10 years with me? And so, you know, reaching people and trying to communicate, right? Like, not to tell our members what the next fight is, right? Our members are telling us what the next fight is, but engaging them so they can understand that you know, the issue isn't about tomorrow, it's about the system that created, you know, this rote world that we live in now. And then also, right, you know, responding to and connecting with our members one-on-one, right? You know, pandemic relief is important and what our members are fighting for currently. And there are a lot of people that we are, you know, engaging that have another issue that is impacting them right now, or this upcoming week, that they need to get to first before they talk about recovery for all, right? They have a child who's sick, who's not getting the educational access or the materials they need at their school, and making sure that they are running virtual school seamlessly for their child at home. That's what's on their mind, right? Maybe recovery for all isn't what's on their mind. And so making sure that we're constantly in communication with our membership, right? Make the Road has a membership greater than 1,000 people, and our organizers, our boots on the ground, are totally important for checking in with them every single week, seeing what their needs are, what's going on at home, right? So that we can make sure that we can best support them so that they can come into an organizing space and feel like they can contribute their strategy and their vision to the fight.
And that's what I think Dolores meant when she said that we have to turn that desire for a solution into some kind of policy proposal in a law, so that you can transfer that need into a policy and then into a law that addresses those communities' concerns. So I think that you are at the forefront of leading that work. Giancarlo, what as you know, as undocumented, the undocumented youth, what are the priorities that they're facing right now, and how can people support that work?
Great. So just to clarify, no longer undocumented. Thankfully, I have my green card now. I was and I was part of the community and still support the community. So I try not to speak for them, but I know a lot of the efforts that Nedia and other organizations out there are definitely fighting for, making sure that at least in New Jersey, the driver's license law that they pushed for, you know, gets enacted in a fair and just way, so that all people can have access to it, because it should be something that we all have access to, because it's important, right? To be able to go to work, to be able to eat. I know another thing is that a lot of people were worried about the DACA being terminated. The current administration has been trying to get rid of it. The Supreme Court is kind of giving them an angle to attack it once again. Another reason for folks to get out the vote, make sure we get Biden elected, and give him a Democratic Senate, so that we can push for things like the DREAM Act and immigration reform, right? The only way we can actually fight for those things if we can actually get the right actors and players in office. So those are, it's all tied together. Like, those priorities are tied into our strategic benchmarks, like, you know, like our milestones. We can't get immigration reform realistically until we get more Democrats elected. Will it is it guaranteed because Democrats are elected? No, we're going to need to pressure those Democrats just as every generation has to, right? And we'll have to keep doing it for generations because we are trying to be the change makers. So that means we're going to have to shake the status quo regardless.
Yeah. Thank you. One of the questions that we have here on the chat is for Dolores. They want to know if in the social movements that are happening around Latin America, historically and today, for the rights of indigenous people in Latin America, or the right for people not to be forced out to leave their countries, and migrate. What movements do you take inspiration from some of from Latin America or from around the world that keep giving you inspiration for the work that you continue to do right now?
They have the same battles in Latin America that we have here. It's basically the working people, the poor people, the indigenous people against the very, very rich people. We have the same thing here in the United States. Maybe it's not as extreme as it is in Latin America, but here in the United States, you have a 10% of the wealthy families, like the ones that own Walmart, 10% of the wealthy families and the wealthy corporation own 90% of the wealth, 90% of the wealth. And so you have the same thing happening in Bolivia right now, where they had Evo Morales, they had the coup to get Evo out. And it's just, Evo Morales organized the peasants and to bring, more of the richness of resources of Chile to the peasants. And that's the same battle that we're having right now in the United States of America, where we've got these super millionaires in the United States that own all the resources of the country. In Latin America, it's more extreme. It's more extreme, you might say, but that's exactly the same struggles that we're having here. And you might say all over the world, this is a fight that we're having. And this is a fight that we're going to be going into, I think, with the Biden administration and in the next few years. Robert Kennedy Jr., he said it very well. When you've got corporations that control a government, you have fascism. And that's a very heavy word, fascism, but we can see in the United States that this is what's happening. We have mass incarcerations. We have all of this wealth. We have people that are homeless. I mean, this is intolerable in the richest country of the world. And when you have, and I'm going to throw this out there, and some people may not like it, but when you have the example of Cuba, a tiny country with an economic boycott where everybody has healthcare, everybody has a college education, it's a poor country. And we have this in the Scandinavian countries, in Europe. England has had healthcare after World War II for everybody, So we have to, and we in the United States, these are things that we don't even know because people here are so ignorant about what's happening in the rest of the world. And in the United States, unfortunately, sometimes we support these dictatorial governments. These are the ones that we work with, and we join with them in helping in keeping the poor people poor, and contributing to this inequality. And we can't continue that way on this earth. We are a global economy.
Yeah.
And here you can have goods be traded back and forth. Money transactions overnight can be traded. Everything can go global except the people. And you have people that are immigrants that are put in prison, or you have people in Europe, and the continents where all of the European nations got their wealth, the continent of Latin America, South America, Africa, where all of these European countries became rich off of the wealth of the other poor people. Now they are, of course, against them. So yeah. I think this is a fight going into the future that people have to be aware of. And the only way that we could possibly defend ourselves is, again, by voting, by elections, by electing progressive people, and to break that control that the rich and the wealthy have over the resources of our planet.
Yes. what you just talked about is what, the connection that you made earlier, that what we're fighting right now in the United States is this continuation of racism and an economic model that thrives on oppressing people and extracting free labor and cheap labor from poor people. So, in Latin America, it was colonialism. In the United States, it's racism, and we're still living the effects of that economic system and how it functions today in a global economy. So I appreciate the context in which you put the struggles that we're having the same struggles against unfettered capitalism, or capitalism that cares more about making profits for billionaires and Wall Street than about securing the basic necessities of people. So I totally agree with that analysis. One of the last questions that I have here from the audience is they want to know, given, and this question is for all of you, and we can take a little bit of time to answer it, given the history of struggles that we have had, that you had lived through, Dolores, and you had led so many struggles, and given what you have gone through, Giancarlo and Nedia, I mean, what drove you to become an active participant in the struggle to change those social dynamics in our spaces, or to challenge the economic norm of profits versus welfare of people? So what inspired you to become an activist? And we can start with Nedia and then go to Giancarlo, and we can finish with Dolores.
Yeah, I feel like as time goes on and I hear this question, like there are so many moments to point to. But I think honestly, the organizing that I have been fortunate to pay witness to has really continued to inspire me, and the perseverance of our community. I think about, my very early days as a member for other community organizations, and going and setting up the chairs and putting on the coffee pot and waiting and receiving people, and hearing people just like chatting, a little bit gossiping about what's happening in the neighborhood, and feeling like, yes, we are, fighting for our community, but we also are building community right now, right here. We are building, like, this is our safe space where we can challenge each other and think about these conversations, and think about what we want for our families and our communities. And I think sometimes we think it's always fight, but it's also a lot of love and the care that we have for each other. And sometimes sticking into a fight, a fight for recovery for all 7 months in, and feeling like you're screaming and no one is hearing you. And a lot of our members totally feeling that way. We did a cacerolazo when we were fighting for economic relief. It was one of their campaign ideas, strategy ideas. And that's exactly it. You're making noise and feeling like nobody can hear you. But our commitment is not only to ourselves, but also to each other because of the community that we've built. And so I think just the perseverance. I mean, a great example is a driver's licenses for all campaign. I think, depending on who you ask, that fight took more than 20 years here in the state of New Jersey. Yeah. Right. And you saw so many different people coming into the space. And more than that, how many more people became activated as a result of that fight? How many people now know each other and now network with each other because of that fight? And yes, it should have been a lot shorter than what it was. But it's incredible. And it's a testament to the organizing and the community that Latinx and allies have built in that driver's license for all fight, that how quickly we were already jumping into new fights immediately after driver's licenses. Because we know that the campaign wasn't the pinnacle, right? It was recognizing our power and the fact that we want to see a different New Jersey. So I think that's really what keeps me going and constantly inspires me.
Thank you. Giancarlo?
I know there's so many people with so many questions, so I'll try to be brief. For me, it started when I realized I had nothing left to lose, because if I wanted to continue, I needed to go to college. And if I needed to go to college, I needed in-state tuition and I needed the DREAM Act. So I realized that's what I needed to do. So that's where I got involved. DREAM Act still hasn't passed. We got in-state tuition. But at the age of 26, I was finally able to get my bachelor's. And now I want to make sure that those types of opportunities get shared with others. So we'll keep that struggle. And a lot of folks, we just need to give them that opportunity to know like, hey, this might seem like a ceiling. You know, it could be a glass ceiling that you can break through if we organize. So that's what it was for me that I started.
So Dolores, what inspires you in continuing to fight for equality for Latinos?
Well, when I learned how to organize, that is what inspired me. Because like everybody here on the Zoom, you know, when we're young, we're always faced with these microaggressions because of who we are. And then especially seeing the plight of farm workers and how badly they were treated. I was very fortunate. You know, my family has been in the United States for many generations. I was born in the state of New Mexico. In fact, my great-grandfather fought in the Civil War on the Union side. And so, you know, I was very fortunate because I had a very nice middle-class upbringing. But again, being a person of color, you know, the police were always bothering us. And you saw the discrimination against so many Latinos and Black people. And all of my friends, and we had Asians and Black friends. And it just, and you felt helpless that there's nothing you could do about it. And then once I learned the magic of organizing, that you could get a few people together in a room and you could talk about the issues. And the great man who really taught myself and Cesar Chavez organizing is actually an Anglo. His name was Fred Ross Sr. And they've written a book about him, by the way, if you want to look it up, Fred Ross Sr. It's called The Social Arsonist. But Fred taught us how to organize and by bringing a few people together and talking about the issues, basically organizing people to take away their fear, take away their self-doubts, convincing them that they had power, that they could make changes. And even if they don't have a college degree, or even if they never went to a day of their life to school, that they still have power, but the power is in their person. And to me, it was like finding a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. This is how it happens. You get people together, you organize, and then you get more people together, and then you take direct action, then you register people to vote, and you get them to vote, and then you elect good people to the different public offices, and it's like magic. And I guess it's called democracy.
Yeah.
I was just reflecting on this the other day because I do a lot of talks and I repeat this over and over again. And then I was thinking to myself, I wonder if the founding fathers of the United States, that when they came up with this idea of a democracy, that's what it was. It was like finding solutions to the problems. But I guess we know it takes a lot of work because again, if people don't participate, then it doesn't happen. So that's what we as organizers have to do, is take this magic word to people and tell them you have power. You can do it. Si se puede. It's in your power. You can make it happen. You don't have to wait for somebody to come in on a white horse, to save you. You can save yourselves, but you are the ones that have to do it.
Thank you. I think with those words, we can close this discussion. And I was just thinking when you just said those words about President Obama's words, when he said that the American experience of a democracy is an aspiration. Right. It's something that we constantly have to work at and make better as citizens. So, our job as organizers and activists is to inspire people, talk to people, and help them realize their own power and embrace the power of the community. So thank you for closing with those words and for inspiring us all these years to do that hard work of talking to people and listening to people and bringing them together so that we can aspire to build a better America and a true democracy for everybody. So thank you for your time. Yeah.
And actually, I like to end with a chant.
Yes.
Okay. And
let's do it.
It's a very simple one, and I know that the labor movement always uses this chant. Okay, so it's going to be very familiar to Nedia. Okay, and the chant is very simple one. I like to ask everybody, who's got the power? And I want you to say, we've got the power.
Yes.
And when I say what kind of power, we say people power. All right. So can we do that?
Yes.
Yes,
Let's do it.
I love it.
All right.
Yes.
So 1, 2, 3. Who's got the power?
We got the power.
What kind of power?
People
People
power.
All right. So can we go forward, continue to organize, continue to bring social justice, racial justice, economic justice to our country and to our world? What do we say? ¿Se puede o no se puede?
Sí se
Sí
puede.
se puede.
Sí se puede.
Let's go.
Thank you.
Sí,
Thank you.
Sí se puede. Sí se puede. Sí se puede.
Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dolores. Un placer verla.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Y a ganar.
Thank you all. And don't forget to check out the Newark Library.
Of course.
Hasta la victoria siempre. All
Hasta
right.
la victoria.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.